The Robinson family got lost in space.
Yeah, the series was set in the far future, 1997.
Do you have a name?
My name's Will Robinson, sir. And I'm not a toy, I'm a boy.
Oh, nonsense, nonsense.
Lost in Space isn't just retro TV, it's a vault of secrets. Most fans remember the campy humor and the robot's iconic warnings, but few realize the chaos behind the scenes. Did you know the most memorable character wasn't even in the original pilot? Or that a live llama nearly ruined an episode? If you love classic sci-fi, backstage drama, or hidden TV history, this is for you. We've uncovered forgotten facts, rare cast confessions, and production quirks from trusted interviews, archives, and insiders. Buckle up. These 20 facts will change how you see the show forever. Number 20. The Great Vegetable Rebellion. By its third season, Lost in Space had leaned fully into absurdity, and no episode proved that more than the Great Vegetable Rebellion. In this notorious installment, the Robinson family encounters a sentient, human-sized carrot named Tybo. Yes, a talking vegetable, who turns the crew into plant life. Even die-hard fans found the premise difficult to defend. Behind the scenes, writer Peter Packer was reportedly so embarrassed by the script that he tried to hide it from actor Jonathan Harris before filming. As if a humanoid carrot wasn't enough, the production team originally planned to include a live llama in the episode. However, the llama kept spitting at the cast and crew, making it impossible to film. The animal was quickly written out, but the damage was already done. The episode became infamous not just for its surreal plot, but for symbolizing the creative extremes the show had reached. This episode aired just 1 week before the series finale. Some fans and critics believe its over-the-top silliness may have contributed to the show's cancellation. Whether you love it or cringe at it, The Great Vegetable Rebellion remains one of the strangest hours of television ever produced. If this detail felt unexpected, the next one will make you question everything. Number 19. Dr. Smith wasn't supposed to stay. Dr. Zachary Smith, the despicable, cowardly saboteur and now a comedic icon, was never meant to last in the family. He never existed in the unaired pilot of Lost in Space, a character conceived thereafter to lend conflict to the Robinsons' journey with an eye toward being the most unidimensional of villains whose betrayal would send the family off course. But Jonathan Harris saw potential in that character and therefore decided to play it differently. Instead of pure evil, Harris gradually made Dr. Smith full of himself, constantly dishing witty insults and melodramatic flourishes. The producers began to notice that as the show transitioned toward comedy, Harris's antics, initially thought too much, gave new life to the show. Fans responded, and a character designed for quick extinction instead gained a permanent status. Dr. Smith became the most recognizable and quotable character in the show, often holding up all attention with the line, "Oh, the pain." Such was the success of his uncharacteristic transition to comic relief that it went on to redefine the very identity of the show. Barring the nuisance of Dr. Smith, Lost in Space would have faded long ago. Number 18. The special guest star power move. Jonathan Harris wasn't just smart in how he played Dr. Smith, he was just as savvy behind the scenes. When he joined Lost in Space, Harris made a bold request. Instead of being listed as a regular cast member, he wanted to be credited as a special guest star. This was highly unusual, especially for someone appearing in every single episode of the show. But Harris believed the label added a sense of prestige and uniqueness to his role. Producers agreed, and from that point on, Harris received special guest star billing in every episode, despite essentially being a lead character. It was a move that not only boosted his visibility, but also separated him from the rest of the ensemble in the eyes of viewers and the industry. No one else in the main cast had this kind of credit. This title gave Harris leverage and reinforced the on-screen persona he had shaped for Dr. Smith, a character who thought he was above everyone else. In a way, the credit became an extension of the character's personality. It was a calculated decision that paid off, making Harris and Dr. Smith stand out in TV history. Number 17. Off-screen romance between cast members. While Lost in Space presented the adventures of a family in front of the camera, other dynamics were developing behind it. Billy Mumy, a small but curious Will Robinson, became good friends with Angela Cartwright, who played his sister, Penny. The friendship blossomed into a romance as they matured. By the time Mumy was offered a driver's license, he and Cartwright were seriously dating. The relationship lasted for several years, long after the cancellation of the series. In fact, they were even engaged briefly, something few fans knew about. It was the first serious romance for both, made more special in the fact that they practically grew up together on the set. Also, even though they eventually grew apart, Mumy and Cartwright stayed close friends throughout the decades that followed. Thus, the romance behind the scenes gave their on-screen chemistry a little bit more substance. In that mix was never-ending sibling rivalry, which at times was influenced and propelled by a real and budding off-screen relationship. For all the spaceships and campy monsters, this story was one of Lost in Space's very few moments of genuine human emotion. Number 16. Smith and Robot missing in pilot. The Lost in Space most fans remember was not the version that producers originally pitched. In the unaired pilot titled No Place to Hide, there was no Doctor, Smith, and no Robot, two of the most iconic elements of the series. The story focused solely on the Robinson family and Major Don West as they embarked on their space mission. Their journey was disrupted not by sabotage, but by a random meteor storm that knocked them off course. This original version was more grounded and serious, lacking the campy flair that later defined the show. After reviewing the pilot, network executives felt it needed more conflict, color, and charisma. That led to the addition of Dr. Smith, who would sabotage the mission, and the Robot, who would become both a tool and a comedic companion. These last-minute changes transformed the show's tone and future. It's hard to imagine Lost in Space without Dr. Smith's dramatics or the Robot's famous "Danger, Will Robinson" warning. Yet, if the pilot had gone forward as is, audiences might have ended up with a very different and possibly less memorable series. Number 15. Lost in Space over Star Trek. Perhaps one of the more crucial pivots in television history, in a bold gesture, CBS opted to greenlight Lost in Space rather than the other very different sci-fi concept that was being pitched almost at the same time, Star Trek. Both concepts were in the network offices around the early 1960s, but CBS executives thought that only one of them could fit into the schedule. Irwin Allen's approach was favored for its family-oriented story, with what at the time seemed a more marketable, adventurous tone. Lost in Space was on first in 1965 and was very successful in the ratings at first. The series combined adventure, family dynamics, and visual smorgasbords that appealed to a wide audience. At the same time, Star Trek had settled onto NBC, where it battled with ratings before rising to syndication fame. CBS's decision would define the destinies of both franchises. Lost in Space burned brightly and briefly, while Star Trek grew into a vast, eternal expanse. In retrospect, one of the most enticing what-ifs beckons. What would sci-fi look like today if CBS had filed Lost in Space in the trash and embraced Star Trek? Number 14. The robot suit cost $70,000. The robot from Lost in Space wasn't just a memorable character, it was a technical achievement. Designed by Robert Kinoshita, who also created Robbie the Robot from Forbidden Planet, the Robot B9 costume was built from fiberglass and intricate metal parts, totaling an astonishing $70,000 to construct, a massive investment for a 1960s TV series. On top of the cost, the suit weighed nearly 200 pounds, making it one of the heaviest costumes ever used in television at the time. Stuntman Bob May got the role of operating the robot for one very simple reason. He could fit inside the bulky suit. But wearing it wasn't easy. The limited visibility, ventilation, and mobility made it a grueling task to perform even the simplest movements. May had to memorize all his motions precisely and endure extreme discomfort for long shooting hours. Meanwhile, voice actor Dick Tufeld recorded the robot's lines separately. Despite the challenges, the robot became one of the most beloved parts of the show. It's a testament to how much craftsmanship and sacrifice went into even the most unusual roles, and how a man trapped inside a 200-pound shell helped define an era of science fiction television. Number 13. Real computers were used on set. One of the most radical decisions that the creator and producer of Lost in Space, Irwin Allen, made while putting together this sci-fi series was the incorporation of computers within the setting of the spaceship Jupiter 2. Instead of using mock-ups or cardboard control panels, actual Burroughs B205 computers were installed for use in filming. The light blinkings, the knobs, and the sleek surfaces certainly added to the sense of reality in the show's high-tech look. Actually, Burroughs B205 is a real-world computer made in the 1950s and 1960s that was employed by federal agencies and research laboratories. It was set up for TV, complicated enough and modern, but definitely beyond what audiences could figure out its function. Allen was known for his obsessive attention to visual details, and this was proof of how far he would go for this illusion to work in the thick of outer space travel. These computers may not have been operational during filming, but they did give Jupiter 2 that polished, immersive sheen that set the show at the time rather apart from its other sci-fi counterparts. Here was the cleverest blend of reality and fiction, grounding wild storytelling in something quite real, albeit strange. Number 12. Based on a comic and novel. While many fans think Lost in Space was an original concept, its roots go much deeper. The show was actually based on the 1962 Gold Key comic Space Family Robinson, which told the story of a scientific family exploring the galaxy. But even that comic wasn't fully original. It was inspired by the 1812 adventure novel The Swiss Family Robinson, a classic tale about a shipwrecked family surviving on a deserted island. This layered origin means that Lost in Space was essentially an adaptation of an adaptation. Irwin Allen struck a deal with the comics publisher to use the family's name and concept for his TV show, giving Lost in Space a unique pedigree. Though the comic included extra characters like a parrot and a dog, the core idea of a stranded family facing danger and discovery remained intact. Understanding this background adds new depth to the show's themes of survival, exploration, and family resilience. What began as a 19th-century adventure novel evolved into a mid-century sci-fi drama, proof that good stories can travel far, even into space. Number 11. Shared alien makeup with Star Trek. In the heyday of television, resourcefulness was equal in importance to originality, and Lost in Space did not shy away from getting a little help in the construction of its aliens. Some of the pointed ear designs for the aliens seen in the show were created from prosthetics used in Star Trek. Although considered rivals, the two series shared a production circle, including makeup artists and effects crews who worked up and down the studios. The episode The Haunted Lighthouse featured aliens with pointed ears disturbingly similar to those of the Vulcans in Star Trek. Instead of creating entirely new molds from scratch, the handicapped Lost in Space crew cut corners by simply using materials from the Star Trek makeup department. This was a cost-cutting measure in a very tight financial and tight shooting era. This enlightening insight highlights just how intertwined the two competing shows could be. It adds unanticipated connectivity between two giant names in television history. While fans probably never saw it, the aliens on Lost in Space were literally wearing bits of Star Trek, making it a sort of crossover. Interesting stuff, but the next one takes intergalactic weirdness to a whole new level. Number 10. Conflicting launch dates for Jupiter 2. Fans who paid close attention to the show's timeline may have noticed a confusing contradiction right at the start of the journey. In the pilot episode, No Place to Hide, the Robinson family launches the Jupiter 2 into space, and the date is clearly stated as October 16, 1997. However, in the very next episode, The Derelict, John Robinson writes in his mission journal that the date is October 21, 1997, yet he also mentions that it's still within the first 24 hours of their mission. This inconsistency was never addressed or explained on the show, and it has puzzled detail-oriented fans for years. Was it a continuity error? A script oversight? Or did the writers simply hope no one would notice? Whatever the reason, it's a small but noticeable break in the internal logic of the series, especially strange given how heavily the show leaned on futuristic science and precise planning. It may seem like a minor detail, but in a series where the mission timeline is crucial to the drama, such a contradiction stands out. It's one of those quirks that make rewatching Lost in Space both fun and a little frustrating for die-hard fans. Number 9. Guy Williams was disillusioned. Guy Williams, the stalwart patriarch John Robinson, had reputedly joined Lost in Space with high hopes. Already an acting luminary through a leading role in Zorro, Williams thought he was marching into yet another grounded, dramatic series. And for a few episodes in its early run, Lost in Space quite delivered another family-centered science fiction, blended with a real sense of danger and jeopardy. But all of that was gone by the second season. The tone of the show shifted sharply toward campy humor, largely propelled by the emerging popularity of Dr. Smith and Robot's entertaining chemistry. As the scripts became more heavily laced with one-liners and slapstick situations, as well as really outrageous alien plot lines, Williams's role became less and less important. He was being relegated more and more to the background as he lost the high ground to Dr. Smith's antics. That was a frustrating change for a classically trained actor sulkily serious about the material. At the end of the series, Williams left the business quietly. Disillusioned with Hollywood, he retired to Argentina, where he lived the rest of his life in relative peace. Ironically, his early work, especially Zorro, became most popular further down in South America. His exit is a reminder that though humor and charm were cast members who didn't always share the same vision. Number 8. Robot voice actor also narrated. Few voices in classic television are as instantly recognizable as that of the Lost in Space robot. The booming alerts of "Danger, Will Robinson" became iconic catchphrases of the series. What many fans don't realize, though, is that the man behind the voice, Dick Tufeld, also served another major role. He was the show's narrator. His voice bookended episodes, guiding viewers into and out of each cosmic misadventure. Tufeld was already a respected voice actor and announcer during television's golden age. His delivery was crisp, commanding, and full of authority, making him the perfect choice to lend credibility to a show that frequently walked the line between serious sci-fi and wild fantasy. His narration helped ground the story, even when the episodes veered into bizarre or comedic territory. The dual role made Tufeld an unsung hero of the show's production. He gave both the robot and the narrative itself a sense of consistency and personality. Without ever appearing on screen, he managed to become one of the most vital and memorable parts of Lost in Space, a voice that defined the series from start to finish. Number 7. Jupiter 2's fictional cost was huge. The vessel Jupiter 2 was thought of as more than just some advanced space travel. It was also a representation of futuristic luxury and technological ambition. For instance, within the world of Lost in Space, the building of this spacecraft was calculated to cost the astounding figure of $30 billion. That is really jaw-dropping, especially considering that it was imagined sometime back in the 1960s. This put the whole value and high-profile nature of the Robinson family mission into context. Equally unbelievable is the answer to the question of how much it actually cost to build the Jupiter 2 set in the real world. $350,000. By that standard, an amount so disproportionate to what was expended on the Star Trek USS Enterprise bridge that the Jupiter 2 is easily counted amongst the most expensive sci-fi sets in television. Very few would dispute that most of the money went towards sleek walls, blinking consoles, and the working lights and instruments, many of which had been scavenged from actual computers. By juxtaposing the filmic astronomical price tag against the actual cost, tells us how deadly serious Irwin Allen was in keeping the forward-looking design illusion alive. He sought to have the ship be thought of as the pinnacle of human achievement, both on-screen and behind the scenes. For audiences, the Jupiter 2 was more than just a setting, it was a character of its own, one with a price tag to match its status. Number 6. Props were recycled constantly. While Lost in Space boasted futuristic sets and high-tech gear, much of it came from creative cost-cutting behind the scenes. Producing a sci-fi show in the 1960s was expensive, especially when every episode demanded new alien worlds, gadgets, and scientific equipment. To manage the budget, the production team routinely recycled props across multiple episodes. Items like long-range scanners, control panels, and alien artifacts were repainted, repurposed, or simply repositioned to appear as something new. This wasn't just a rare occurrence, it was a core strategy. One scanner, for example, was used in 3 separate episodes. The Derelict, the Ghost Planet, and Deadliest of the Species, each time passed off as a completely different device. Most viewers never noticed the duplication, thanks to clever set dressing and camera angles. The practice of reusing props wasn't unique to Lost in Space, but the show's ambitious setting made it especially necessary. It was a balancing act, delivering the look and feel of outer space on a television budget. The result was a production that stretched every dollar, using visual trickery to maintain the illusion of constant innovation while reusing the same materials again and again. Number 5. Award-winning costume design. Beneath the glittering and futuristic outfits, Lost in Space remained evident as wardrobe calls for the show's merit one of its shining features. Such outfits were not tools for flamboyance, they brought glory to them. In 1968, designer Paul Zastavnovich was honored by the Costume Designers Guild for his work on the series. His designs helped create the show's appearance and its otherworldliness. Zastavnovich leaned into silver fabrics, bold patterns, and space-age materials to bring a futuristic vision to life. Costumes shifted every year, and old uniforms and accessories were retained to keep pace with the mood changes of the show. His work gave Robinson and fellow characters as memorable visual identification as it defined the times. At a time when costume design for television was not much noticed, and especially in sci-fi, this award pointed out how really innovative and influential his work stood. They didn't just costume the characters, they filled the themes of adventure, exploration, and survival with the unknown. The costume of Lost in Space remains today a sweet reminder of that sci-fi style of the 1960s. Number 4. Billy Mumy later joined Star Trek. Though Billy Mumy is best remembered for playing young Will Robinson on Lost in Space, his connection to science fiction didn't end there. Decades later, he made a surprise return to the genre with a guest appearance in Star Trek, Deep Space Nine. In the 1998 episode titled The Siege of AR-558, Mumy played Kellen, a Starfleet officer involved in one of the series' grittiest and most intense battles. This wasn't just a nostalgic casting choice, it was a full-circle moment for Mumy, who had been a lifelong fan of Star Trek even while filming Lost in Space. He appreciated the opportunity to return to science fiction television as a human character, avoiding the heavy prosthetics often associated with alien roles. His performance was praised for its emotional depth, fitting seamlessly into a story about the toll of war on even the most disciplined officers. For fans of both series, Mumy's appearance served as a subtle bridge between two pillars of classic science fiction. It proved that his contributions to the genre extended well beyond his childhood stardom. and that he could still hold his own in one of television's most respected sci-fi universes. Number 3. The robot's lights were head-activated. The Lost in Space. Robot may seem a high-tech modern marvel in the movies. Behind the screen, however, there was nothing of the sort, rather very low-tech and curiously physical. Inside the 200-pound fiberglass suit was stuntman Bob May, who didn't just walk in the bulky costume, he also had to trigger the robot's blinking torso lights manually. How? By pressing a hidden button with his head from inside the suit. There were no automatic controls or remote systems for the lighting. Instead, May memorized the timing of his scenes and had to nudge the switch with precise movements, all while performing lines and actions in a cramped, hot space with very limited visibility. This became an incredible layer of complication that already thickened the role and made every move a precise part of the performance, well rehearsed in practice. Indeed, the hallmark of the freewheeling improvisational spirit of 1960s television production. What was cutting-edge technology to the audience turned out when the camera panned back to be a view of a man in a fiberglass dome using his head, literally, to animate the robot. That piece of trivia from behind the scenes adds more to how impressive the robot's iconic presence turns out to be. Number 2. Irwin Allen-made Swiss Family Movie. Though Lost in Space was a futuristic reimagining of the Swiss Family Robinson, producer Irwin Allen wasn't finished with the original concept. Nearly a decade after Lost in Space ended, Allen returned to the source material and produced a more faithful adaptation of the 1812 novel. In 1975, he released a made-for-TV movie simply titled The Swiss Family Robinson, which starred Martin Milner, Willie Ames, and a young Helen Hunt. This version left the sci-fi elements behind in favor of classic shipwreck survival. Set on a deserted island instead of a distant galaxy, the story followed the same themes of family resilience and ingenuity in the face of unknown dangers. Allen's goal was to stay closer to the spirit of the original book, while still bringing his flair for drama and spectacle. The project later spun off into a short-lived TV series, but it never achieved the same cultural impact as Lost in Space. Still, it showed Allen's enduring fascination with stories about families facing the wilderness, whether stranded in the stars or marooned at sea. It was a full-circle moment for the man who helped bring the Robinson name into the world of science fiction. What makes this project even more interesting is how it subtly highlighted the differences between adventure genres of the time. While Lost in Space relied on imaginative creatures, alien planets, and high-stakes sci-fi scenarios, the 1975 adaptation focused on grounded, practical survival. There were no robots or futuristic gadgets, just a family learning to endure using limited resources and teamwork. In many ways, it was Allen stripping the concept down to its roots, exploring human adaptability without the distractions of fantasy. Though it lacked the popularity of his earlier work, it reinforced his ability to reimagine timeless stories across multiple genres and settings. Hold tight, because our top pick will completely change how you see the show. Number 1. Theme song composed by John Williams. Before gaining fame with Star Wars, Jaws, and E.T., this composer, John Williams, was referred to as Johnny, a rising talent working to break into Hollywood. He was only 33 when hired to create the theme for Lost in Space, one of his earliest TV credits. The producers asked for a futuristic yet catchy sound to fit the adventure theme of the program, and Williams obliged with a dramatic orchestral accompaniment that stood out instantly on 1960 television. It is the often overlooked aspect of this score that makes it so experimental for its time. Williams, unlike most composers in his day, avoided thin electronic cues and loved his grand, sweeping melodies and full orchestration, the hallmarks of the legendary career that was about to unfold. His work on Lost in Space gave the show a cinematic atmosphere that no other series of science fiction series offered in that age. The show may have taken a campy turn, but the march is bold and serious, giving an epic quality to the tale. And most viewers today wouldn't know that the man who created cinema's most iconic music actually started out helping the Robinson family navigate space. Lost in Space signaled more than just a fictional voyage. It also heralded a musical legacy. Williams's involvement with Lost in Space also reflected a transitional moment in television scoring. Up to that point, many sci-fi shows leaned heavily on stock music or simplistic themes that lacked depth. Williams broke that mold. His compositions didn't just accompany the show, they elevated it. Even in episodes that veered into absurd territory, the music grounded the action and lent emotional weight to scenes that might have otherwise felt hollow. It was a rare instance where a television score carried the gravity and structure of a full cinematic suite. The opening theme itself went through different iterations over the seasons, but Williams's musical DNA remained embedded in the show's identity. It's no coincidence that the music from Lost in Space is still fondly remembered by fans and collectors today. For Williams, the experience was a stepping stone that sharpened his style and prepared him for the iconic themes he would later create for Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and Jurassic Park. Looking back, it's clear that Lost in Space didn't just give us a new kind of science fiction, it helped launch one of the most important musical careers in entertainment history. Which of these facts surprised you the most? Did you already know about the infamous carrot or the $30 billion spaceship? Drop your favorite moment or memory in the comments. If you want more classic TV deep dives like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and click that bell icon. Don't miss our next video on other iconic sci-fi shows that time forgot.